when?
Okay, we're going.
Oh, we're going. Okay. All right, so tonight's presentation is putting your garden to bed. And you all know me. I'm Karissa. I'm a horticulturist, and I work at Cool Gardens. So I have a lot of questions that come up this time of year, all the time about I want to get rid of my daylilies. They look horrible. What do I do? So I'm going to kind of focus on some perennials, and I brought some perennials here tonight. Putting your garden to bed can include the annual bed, the garden bed with the vegetables, and then your perennial beds and any other kind of beds you have. So because I want to kind of keep this shorter, we're going to kind of focus more on the perennials. So I have some sample perennials here that probably look the same in your garden as well. Everything's looking kind of ratty right now. It's ready to, start cleaning things up. So I have a lot of people that ask me, well, the leaves are still kind of green and I'm afraid to cut it. Don't be afraid. You got to put your brave hat on and you got to snip those puppies down, because you don't want this going into your garden. If it has any disease and then the leaves drop and then it spreads in your garden, you don't want that. So we're going to talk about what the difference between pruning and deadheading is. So as you know, as the flowers are going and the flowers go by, you can just snip off right where flowers have gone by. And that will be called deadheading, okay? So you're just cutting the snips of those flowers off. And with pruning, you're actually going to be like cutting all the way down, okay? So we're going to also talk about how to prune and how to deadhead hydrangea. I have a lovely sample here, okay? So that's one of the other things we're going to talk about. And again, this is deadheading, and this is pruning, okay? So this plant here, usually about this time, starts looking like this. And this happens to be the fanfare blaze. This is called the blanket flower, also known as a gaillardia. And during the August months, with all the humidity, you'll find a lot of fungus happening, a lot of powdery mildew, septora leaf spot, which is this. It doesn't really hurt the plant, but makes it very unsightly. We don't want these leaves, we don't want to leave this for the fall. We don't want the leaves to fall off, get in the garden, overwinter and spread, okay? So, we don't. So we want these leaves to go. We want all this to go. So do I have a volunteer who would like to chop this down? And I can show you the proper way to do it. Whoever wants to come on up?
Just say I'm doing this for your own good.
Yes. I tell my employees when I have them do it.
Just come in here, I don't hesitate.
Yep. Tell my employees put their brave hats on, because they're like, but I'm hurting. Oh no. And you can just do it.
Number one.
Yep. Perfect.
I have my loppers.
Yeah. Loppers would be a lot quicker. Exactly. So as you can see, she's going right down to the base. And no hesitation, she's just cutting it off. The other thing that I want to let you know is that when you do this with your tools, make sure your tools are clean. Just have a little glass of water, like half rubbing alcohol, half water, and dip them in between each plant because you don't want to spread disease, okay? That's a quick clean, okay? So as you can see, she's going right down to the base. And this is going to be a lot easier that when comes spring and you're trying to rake out the garden with all those leaves that have fallen, you don't have, your rake doesn't get stuck in all these little sticks that are sticking out. So she's going right down. Yep, and she, perfect. Thank you, Nan. Very much. Appreciate it. And that's how it's going to look, okay? And that's what you want. Now, you want to do this around this time because you need to have time for the plants to develop a callus, kind of harden off these cuts so that infection, bacteria, fungus, anything doesn't go in there and kind of kill the plant from the top down to the bottom, okay? So that's very important. Now, some people say, okay, well, that's fine because that kind of was like, it's a little harder stem. It's herbaceous, but it's a little woody.
Can you do this now, or should we wait?
Yes.
You can do it
Yes.
now.
I don't know about you, but I don't want that. I don't want my neighbors seeing that in my yard. Let's get rid of that puppy. So people ask me, your hostas. Your hostas, they really got to go too. So people ask about, what about the ones that kind of look okay, and the ones that don't? If you're going to get out there and spend the time, just do it all, okay? So this one doesn't have have those really long, hard stems, so people say, well, what do I do with this one? Who wants to come up and I can show you how to do this? Anybody have a volunteer? Want to cut this one? Okay, great. Come on up, Elena. Now these don't have the woody stems like this other one where it was pretty easy to tell. So you're still going to cut it right down to the base of the soil. And Elena's experienced with this, so as you can see, she's gathering up like a ponytail, and then she's just going to snip, snip, snip. And you don't have to do this one snippy at a time. Look at that, she's a pro. There you go. Done. Yes, she has very good experience. Thank you, Elena. Yes. See, nice haircut. She could have been a hairdresser in her former life. So there you go. So that's how you do that one. Yeah, exactly. We could have done that here for you. Now this is a hosta, and usually by now there's either frost damage, because we did have a little bit of a light frost, or slug damage, anything like that. And this one's a real easy one because you can tell where the stems are, and cut that right down to the ground there. When you're doing this, make sure that you are collecting your trash, your debris, because I personally, at this stage in the game, when you usually have fungus and usually have infection and all this stuff, I like to just bag it up in a trash bag, personally, and I just get rid of it, because I know that I'm going to have some things that are diseased, you know, and I don't want to spread it. Now, some people, if you have a compost further away, you know, I know that Gaillardia usually gets diseased. So if I have that in my garden, I don't even play with it, and I just get rid of it and put it away. So. That I think is the easiest thing to do to make sure that you're really doing good cultural practices. So again, between each plant, you know, you can just dip them in some rubbing alcohol with water and clean your pruners. The other thing is, after you're done your entire garden, what you want to do is disinfect your rake. Now your rake's really big, so I just use some Windex and I disinfect it 409, Lysol. Kills 99% 9 bacteria, so you know, you're not going to dip a rake in a big bucket. So that's something good that can help. And that's another thing that you need to do after you're done putting your garden to bed by cleaning everything, is make sure you put your tools away, and make sure you put them away clean and disinfected. Along with kind of doing the storage things, you need to think about where you're going to put your fertilizer, then your bags, your grass seed. You're not going to leave it out in the shed where it can get eaten by critters, rodents, anything like that. Anything that is a ready-to-use spray, you know, like your fungicides or anything that has water in it, you can't leave it outside because it will freeze. Okay, so you should think about bringing them in, making sure that they're secure in a container or you know, in a bag or some sort where you're going to put it down cellar, or if you have a heated garage, someplace where it's not going to be subject to the freezing temperatures. If you can do that, then you can use them year after year and keep them like that. And usually the efficacy doesn't deteriorate as much as if they were exposed to the elements. Okay? So the next thing is, after you've cut down, I want to cut some. I have these. I have echinacea, coneflower, and boy, they just look like that right now. So. What's that? If you, yes, definitely. If you want them to spread, you can shake off the seeds, and then, you know, they'll kind of spread next year. Definitely. Usually by the shaking and the moving of everything, they naturally kind of fall anyway. By the time I get around to it, they've all dropped. So definitely, that's a good point, Nan. Definitely. Yes?
Karissa, is there a train of thought with rose bushes of how short you should cut them?
Yes, and I'm going to go over that when I touch base on the hydrangea too. Yep. Daylilies. You know that these puppies are, in my opinion, they should be cut before they look like this. Yeah, so going along with putting things away and cleaning up. Oh yeah, would you like to do that to the daylilies? Yeah, come on over. Come on over. This is interactive here.
Now, do you do this the same as we?
You got it, right down to the soil level, as far down as you can go. Yep. Yours don't look like that. Good for you.
Yeah, I've already cut mine back.
Yeah. Some varieties are, you know, messier than others. Yep.
In fact, I have some I'll go and get the
Great.
very first to blossom in the spring.
Excellent.
Early July.
Thank you.
My own garden.
Yep. Right down there, that's what she did here. So one of the other things I want to talk about is when you are cleaning up your gardens, if it's vegetable gardens, there's a couple things you can do to kind of overwinter them if you're doing root vegetables or carrots or parsnips or anything else. There's this product that you can only harvest around on the northeast, usually in July. I think it's June and July you can harvest it on the northeast, and it's called salt marsh hay because there's salt marshes, okay? And this is what it looks like. And let me give you some good points about this, okay? This does not rot, okay? When you put straw down on a bed, after periods of time, the straw decomposes and rots a little bit. This does not rot. This is harvested from the salt marshes. And then people say to me, but I'm putting it on my garden, what about all the salt? It's like, the salt seeds that are in here only germinate from the salt water. So as long as you're not putting salt water on your bed, you're not going to have anything sprout. So, and this is really good stuff. So this doesn't rot. So unlike where we always tell you, if you're going to put something down, put straw, not hay, because hay has all the weed seeds. Well, even better than the straw, but more expensive, is the salt marsh hay, which is really good. So I'll just, if any of you want to just kind of feel it and see it, it's long, it's skinny, it's finer, it's not as messy as straw. And it goes for about between $12 and $16 for a bale. But what you can do with that is you can use that instead of newspaper and straw over your root vegetables in your garden or anything that you need to protect. You can also put it over, again, you could do the base of roses if you need to protect that. If you have butterfly bush in an area that's maybe a little more exposed and you need to protect it, you can put that around the base as well. There's many different things you can do with that, but that is only harvested in June and July, and so it's only available for a very short time. So that's why you only see it right now, and that's why you can only buy it, and then all of a sudden, I'll go get some of that, and it's gone. So just keep that in mind. Do you have a question?
Safely a number of bales.
You come up, see me.
I'm gonna ask.
Yep. So putting your garden to bed, you can put newspaper down, a couple layers of newspaper. Don't put any of the color print. Just use the black and white. Put a couple layers thick. Put some straw over it if you want. Spray it first so it doesn't blow away. Or you can, just do that. And that's pretty thick stuff. And you can wet it down. And I have carrots that I'm still harvesting. I have some other things that I'm doing, and I have that down. And you can just, beets, things like that. You can just go out there, lift up a couple layers, and start pulling them. So that's something you can do for putting your garden to bed. There's also options that I know, Elena, you had talked about. If you're going to completely take, for example, an area out of your garden, your vegetable garden, you could do the winter crops, like winter rye and stuff like that. You could do that, and that's kind of like putting your garden to bed, and then in the spring you can rototill it in. Another great thing that I really strongly encourage all of you to do, if you happen to be going by the ocean and you have a bucket with you, grab some seaweed, okay? Grab some seaweed. And if it's not in an area where it's by a rock wall where it gets broken up into bits and you just have those big long chunks, just lie it out on your grass, take your lawnmower over on the mulching setting and chop it up and then rake it up and put it on your lawn. Put it on your bed, whatever you're trying to improve with soil conditions. Yes, and you can just, it'll actually change your soil's ability to retain water. If you have very, very sandy soil, it helps with the water holding capacity and also just the really good nutrients and everything that's in there. And that's free. So that's really good.
I did that one year.
Yeah.
I got garbage bags full of it.
If you do it 3 years in a row, if you have sandy soil, if you do it 3 years in a row, just a couple inches for 3 years, it changes the texture of the soil dramatically, that you will considerably be watering your garden less.
My sister lives up in Campobello during the summer, and they just have like horrid soil up there, hard soil.
Yep.
And they have been doing it now for about 5 years, and it's unbelievable.
Yeah, it's amazing what Mother Nature gives you in one section that you can use in another.
Right.
So those are really good things to do for kind of putting things down and cutting and kind of prepping your bed. If you need to add lime, now is the time to do it. You can add lime to sweeten your soil if you feel like you need to do that. I would always suggest that you do a pH test first so you know how much to do, how much to add. So you just not, it's kind of like making a soup. You don't just keep throwing salt in there without tasting it, right? Right, Ann? Exactly, see? So you gotta test it before you keep adding items. So kind of going along with other things such as trees and shrubs, I brought in a hydrangea, of course now everybody knows what kind it is. But this here, people ask me all the time, do I cut this down, do I cut this down? As we know, we talked with Elena a few times about which hydrangeas do you cut back, when don't you? Now again, this is where we're talking about simple pruning versus deadheading. Now, this hydrangea is a paniculata, which blooms on new wood. Anything that blooms in the late summer, you don't want to cut back. Doesn't have time to heal, you want to cut it back in March, April, okay? So, but there still needs to be some work done to this, because as you can see, we have these blooms that have gone by, okay? And if someone had kept up on this in the garden center and continued to prune it, they would have had a lot more of these, okay? So what do you do with these? And this is where deadheading comes in, okay? Deadheading is simply removing the blossom, okay? Pruning would be cutting it here, one of these, okay? So all we're doing is simply deadheading and simply removing the blossoms. Now there's two reasons why we do this. One is because it looks horrible. Two is because what's going to happen with our winters when we have tons of snow? Exactly. These act just like open hands, where they're going to collect all that snow, just like when we had that's exactly, and ice, so just like when we had all that happen in October, you know? And then, yes, remember all that snow and everything just, exactly. So when you cut these blooms off, they don't act like hands ready to catch the snow. So this is where you just deadhead. You don't prune this. You just, now, obviously, this maybe was, I think this was laying down a couple days in the garden center. The wind is so heavy. It starts to, the wind blows down there and it just starts to kind of turn sideways. So then someone says, well, I don't like the shape of that. Right. Don't worry. You're going to cut it back in April, right down as far as you can, and then the sticks and all the stems are going to grow perfectly straight. So when people see this and they say, oh, too bad that's crooked or anything like that, I like to explain to them that, you're going to prune this in March or April, depending on the weather, and it's going to come back, straight back up and it's going to be fine. So don't worry about what it looks like now. Okay, so again, this is where we're just doing a simple deadheading, okay? And usually it's right above, like you can do it right between here. So you can do a simple one step, and then if you want, you can cut these off here. But you don't need to go further down, just right to the next set of leaves, right? Get all the flowers off and just deadhead it.
What is the harm in going further down if that's not going to be the wood that we
What the harm is that the closer to the tip, the softer the wood, the faster it heals.
Yeah.
The further down the stem, the harder the wood, the longer it takes to heal. So this is harder wood, this is softer wood. So the further down you get, the longer it's going to take for it calloused over. And as we get into the cooler temperatures, the more likely that wound is going to be exposed and can get disease, fungus, and anything, and just have a hard time healing. If we have an unexpected cold snap or anything like that, it can really shock the plant. And then you have dieback. You get dieback on the tip. And then what does the plant try to do? It tries to push all its energy to fix the dieback and try to fix it, instead of storing that energy in the roots to make sure that it can overwinter for the winter. And that goes along with roses too. Roses are just like hydrangeas in the sense that, you don't prune them at all. You can deadhead them, cut off the buds, but you don't prune them in the fall for that same reason. Because they have a hard time callousing over and in sealing their cuts before the winter comes and everything like that. So that's why you don't, anything that flowers generally, rule of thumb, in the fall or like, you know, June, July, August, in the midsummer into fall, you don't prune, you prune that in the spring, okay? And then anything that flowers in the spring, such as your lilacs and your azaleas and your rhododendrons, you prune those immediately after flowering. Yep. Okay. So, do I have any questions so far? Yes.
My hydrangea looks like it should have looked 2 months ago.
So right now it's gorgeous?
Yes.
Excellent. Then just don't do anything. Just keep, you know, blooming, deadheading the, you know, blooms, and they'll keep coming, and just let it be. Generally, what you want to do is just wait until all of the leaves fall off after a hard frost. Hard frost for us is like 25, 24 degrees. Generally, around that temperature, maybe a little cooler, the leaves will drop. Once the leaves have dropped, rake them up and dispose of them, and clean your rake. You just want to make sure, good cultural practices, what they call them is cultural practices, cultural controls. Raking, pruning, cleaning, anything that you can do to kind of keep the area clean, disease-free, pest-free, is really going to help your plants going into the next season and make them healthier and be able to sustain, you know, any kind of insect attack or anything like that. Another good thing to use if you don't have or you can't afford the salt marsh hay is you can use the leaves in your yard. You can break them up, you know, put your lawnmower on the mulch setting, break them up, and then use that as a good cover if you have some plants that you maybe just planted and you're afraid that they haven't set root enough and you want to make sure that they're going to make it. You know, pine needles. Goodness knows we have plenty of those. Pine needles, just, you know, mound them up right around the base, and you know, you can kind of protect them going into the winter that way. So I'm going to touch a little bit about on your vegetables, if you have a vegetable garden that you want to put to bed. Tomato plants. Usually, I would say, just pull them right up when you're ready and done with them, and just put them in a trash bag. 9 out of 10 times, we all get the blight. Or some kind of start of the blight. You can see those leaves yellowing. Again, just make sure that you bag those and don't throw them over the fence, anything like that. How many people planted the annual, impatiens? Okay, did you see the ones out here have the downy mildew?
Yes.
The ones that got planted in this planter?
Yes.
You turn that leaf over,
Yes.
it's all white.
Yeah.
Yep. So even though people thought, oh, and I just pulled mine up today because it was trash day, and I threw them right in the trash.
I started mine from seed.
Yep.
And I've got it.
Because it's in the air. Yep, it's in the air.
How many years we didn't have anything bother them?
I know. Yep. Well, there is something. There's about 17 universities throughout the United States, mainly in the West Coast, that have got together that have come up with this project called from a company, and it's called AgriFos. And it's a biological, and not a biological, it's a chemical, but it's it does control and stop this downy mildew. But for the average homeowner who doesn't want to continually apply something every 7 days, you know, we just want to plant our flower and have it be beautiful. It's really not something that's practical. So yes, there is a quote cure, but it's not good enough for the mainstream market. So they're kind of trying to develop it and work on it. Because what we want is when we get aphids on a plant, we want to spray it once and have it be gone, right? We don't want to do it every 7 days because the life cycle of an aphid over 70 degrees is like 4 days. So whatever you spray that week, okay, you killed, but then, you know, 7 days later you got the babies that didn't hatch yet right back on there. So they have kind of developed that, but in order to get all these millions of people that love the impatiens to spray before they get the disease, and then continue to spray if it gets the disease, and then continue after, it's not going to happen. So
The best thing to do is just to substitute fibrous begonias.
Yep.
Instead of impatiens.
exactly. Yep.
They're beautiful right now.
I got mine free, so I planted them anyway, and they lasted. They did well, but yes, I agree. And So anything like that, definitely want to bag up and rake and clean and put away. And, you know, pull your weeds too. The other important thing is, people say, well, I don't have any pine needles, I don't have any oak leaves around, or maple leaves, I don't have any of that, so I'm just going to use my grass clippings. Please do not use your grass clippings right now, because if you bag up your grass clippings, you should really throw them away, because what are you bagging up right now?
Seeds.
Seeds from the crabgrass that just had this wonderful heyday of the summer. So you do not want to put your bagged grass on your lawn, on any kind of perennial bed or anything like that, because now you're introducing all the crabgrass that you just sucked up in the bag.
Right.
So just keep that in mind.
Do you think that we get weeds from compost? These composts that we buy?
You can.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, I'll
Yeah.
certainly just, equate in bag
Mm-hmm.
compost.
Oh, and when you look on the bag, it'll tell you on the back the percentage of weed seeds that's in there. So there is a description, and it says, and I think there's a law that says, I think it has to be less than like 3% or something like that, or I'm not sure exactly, but when you look on the back of the ingredients in that compost, it'll say like 1% other weeds. So there is some in there.
And also, in order to get compost that's completely weed-free of seeds,
Has to be
it has to
sterilized.
be cooked.
Yeah.
It has to be
Yes, yeah, it
cooked
would.
at a very, very
To
high
have a barbecue.
temperature.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it came in by the yard.
Yeah, I mean, chances are it's gonna have some, but, you know, I mean, because it's out in the ground and, you know, wind moves weed seeds and everything, so. But if you're buying a higher quality, or if you're buying it from a reputable company, chances are they've been stirring it, they've been moving it, it's been baking, you know, so, I mean, you know, you need to know what you're buying and where you're buying it from. Yeah, so, I mean, and also, if you are going to be using the compost, and you're gonna be putting it in your garden, 9 out of 10 times, there's gonna be something else you're putting over it if you're making it a pretty bed. So if you're putting the mulch on top, that suppresses a lot of the weeds too. Yeah. So if any of you have plantings, any plants that you're doing now, as you know, fall is a great time for planting. Several reasons why, because it's getting cooler, so that when you water, the ground stays wetter longer, so there's less watering you have to do. You can still fertilize right now if you are planting something new. I wouldn't fertilize past October 15th, that's kind of pushing it. You want to get your plants to set root. It takes about approximately 3 weeks for a new plant to set root in the ground, so that's why we always want to let you know that usually our ground freezes December 1st, give or take, depends on the weather. But fall is a great time because all the nurseries, all the garden centers are getting rid of all their plants, because if they don't sell them, they gotta bring them down back somewhere, they gotta cover them up, they gotta try to keep all the mice away from them and everything from happening to them, so they can pull them out next year. And they don't have time to pull them out next year, in the middle of April, when they're getting tons and tons of trucks coming in. So what happens? They sit down there, and then they don't get sold, and then they die, and then they have to get thrown out. So then they have these wonderful sales on them. So if you can get any kind of plants that you have room for now, you want to make sure that you have your hole dug, that you're ready, that you make sure that everything is ready, good to go, and then when you have that plant in the ground, you still got to make sure you water it. Not as much as if you were going into, you know, July or August, but just make sure you get it watered, and you can have, you know, a great plant at a low discount price.
What kind of fertilizer do you use now?
Right now, if you are going to fertilize, I would suggest using a slow release or an organic product. None of this higher number stuff, 10, 20, 10, 20, Miracle Grow stuff, that's faster acting. That's going to push a lot of fast growth. You don't want that. You want something like an Espoma brand, which is a slow release, like a garden tone, a plant tone. If it's an azalea or a blueberry bush or rhododendron, you're going to use holly tone. Just to let you know that these organics that you're putting in, the granules that you're putting in here, are not only activated by water, but they're also activated by the soil temperature. So as the colder we get, the slower it releases the food. So if we're getting into colder and colder temperatures, how convenient that that granular fertilizer is not working as much. And it will sit there and it will be dormant and it won't work after a certain temperature. So So then in the spring, when everything starts warming up, lo and behold, it's feeding it again. And so it's giving it the nutrients. So that's an important thing to know, is that these slow release organic fertilizers not only work with water, but they also are activated by soil temperature.
And they will last from fall
Yeah,
into the spring.
yep, exactly.
And all that.
So if you have some things planted already and you want to give them a good boost because maybe it's had disease, maybe something's happened to it, maybe you're thinking, oh my gosh, I don't know, it didn't make it, almost didn't make it last winter, I don't know if it's going to make it this winter. Take a crowbar, okay? Take a crowbar, go about 12 inches out, depending on the size of the plant. Put a crowbar in there, make a hole, about maybe 6 to 8 inches. Do about 5 or 6 of them, depending on how, like for example, a plant this size, I'd probably do about 6, right about here. 6 holes, okay? And take a handful of that slow release, like the plant tone, and I drop a handful in each hole, cover it back up. A handful, not a lot. Cover it right back up.
These spikes that they sell,
Mhm.
put in the ground, are they slow release or?
Yes, the spikes are slow release, but let me tell you what you're paying for.
But I just want a bunch of them.
Mhm.
A whole bunch.
The spikes are great. However, you're paying for the shape of the plastic spike and all of the plastic material that's holding it in there. So the spikes are great. If you got them, they're great, but they're expensive. They're definitely, you could buy a 5-pound bag of fertilizer for what you would pay for 4 spikes. So if you have them, go ahead and use
No,
them.
I want them at the.
Great, yeah, go ahead and use them. Really, you're doing the same exact thing if you use a crowbar.
Okay.
So if you have them, go ahead and use
So
them.
this isn't time to use it. I was going
Yep.
to keep them for spring, but I could use them now.
If you have a plant that you think is not going to make it, or you think needs a little help, or is struggling, go ahead and use them now. Otherwise, wait, yeah, because it's only going to do so much, right? Elena?
Yes, Karissa,
Yes.
how do you feel about spraying your, like your azaleas and if your rhododendrons are small, with Willproof?
Yes, that's another great item to talk about too. Willproof, an anti-desiccant. There's Wilt Stop and Willproof. One's kind of like for the spring, one's for the winter. Does the same thing. They're anti-desiccants. It's a thin layer of kind of like a waxy coating that it puts on the plant. That's a great point. I think I have that down here too. Willproof. Yes, I did. Thank you. Yes, Willproof is very, very versatile. Willproof is a spray that you can find now because we're going to be getting into the holiday season with all your greens. And I'm sure, Nan, this is something that you would benefit from if you don't know about it already. But the Willproof is an anti-desiccant that stops leaves from transpiring their water from their leaves when it's windy. So we all know that the colder it gets, we know it's really, really cold because we look outside and we see our rhododendron rolled up like a cigar, right? That is nature's way of protecting itself. It is curling up, reducing the surface area of the leaf so there's less transpiration and so the plant doesn't dry out as fast. Okay, so what we can do is we take this waxy coating called Willproof. You got to spray it when it's like 50. 45 or 50. Can't be spraying it out there at 0 degrees, okay? So now would be, a good time. We could even probably do it, I'd say probably end of October, beginning of November, depending on our, snowfall. And what you do is you just coat the entire plant with this, and then you just let it dry. And then it will kind of protect that from the wind, because if you have an exposed area with your, one of your plants and it dries out and it starts getting that leaf burn, this will help it. So.
I have to say that,
Go ahead.
that since I started using it, we have huge rhododendrons.
Yep.
And of course, I can't get way up at the top, but we used to get a lot of, like, say, the month of March, the leaves would brown and
Yep.
everything. And everybody thinks, oh, it didn't make it through the cold. But
Right.
it's not the cold, it's the wind.
Right.
It's the wind that dries it out.
And the taller the plant, the more it's going to lose water because it's
Yeah.
trying to get from a frozen ground, all that water from the ground, all the way up 10 feet or 8 feet, depending on how tall it is. And those are the last to get the water.
Yeah.
So those are the first to burn.
Yeah.
Yep.
So since I've been using the Willproof,
Yep.
I've noticed a very, good
Result.
result.
Excellent. And also double duty with the Willproof is when you get your Christmas greens and you get your wreaths, You know how you put them on your front door and you put your glass screen in, you close it, and now they bake? Well, or you pick your holly from outside, you bring it in, you put it on your mantle and you fry it. Well, Willproof protects your Christmas greens. It protects your greens. What we do at the garden center in the floral department, we spray all of our greens because we're making indoor arrangements that have candles in them. You know, you don't want to burn a crispy, you know, have a crispy centerpiece and then all of a sudden stick a candle in it and light it up. We spray Willproof and the floral department on all of those. We spray it on our wreaths before they go out. We sell it all the time there, and it's great because it's multi-purpose, multi-use. Yep.
Now, on the rhodie, that's what I was gonna ask you, you spray underneath or just on top?
The top coating's fine, yeah, because it will kind of seal it, yeah, it'll seal it, yep.
If you can, I think if you can, like it was high, you can probably get the bottoms too, you know. I don't, like Chris said, I don't.
Are you doing it with a little bottle or you got a big
No,
spray?
because you can buy it in a spray.
Yep.
Yeah.
If you have big
I mean,
areas,
I've used it before, but I
Yep.
wondered if you've got a big area.
just buy several bottles and buy one of those hand pump ones, pour it in there, and then you can, you know, get more of a pressurized spray, because yeah, that trigger finger, yeah, that's rough.
I have to keep switching things.
Yeah, exactly, yeah, that's good, yep. Does anybody have any specific questions? We kind of talked about, yes, Linda?
Willproof,
Yes.
can you spray it on all your perennials, all the plants?
Well, you're gonna cut down 90% of them,
Oh,
so you're
that's
not gonna
true,
want them.
that's true.
Yeah.
So you like
This
the
is stuff like
hydrangeas and
evergreens.
azaleas and things.
Evergreens, if you have an arborvitae that's close by that, you know, you wanna protect, evergreens.
Hydrangea.
Hydrangeas, nope, because they lose their leaves.
Jams.
Yep,
Oh,
PG.
anything that doesn't lose its leaf.
Yes, evergreens, you got it. Yep, yep, you can use it on that. With, going back to the garden then, so, you know, usually you wanna pull up all your vegetables, get them right out of there, bag them, throw them away, you know,
If they're
clean it up all.
diseased, can you put them, you can put them in the compost pile if they're not diseased.
Yep,
Yeah.
if you know for a fact they're not diseased,